time I have attempted this episode so far, so I am filled with determination! Today is Saturday, the 26th of October, 2016 EV, and I am incredibly sorry for delaying this so much, and for all the technical failures the last 2 times. Currently, it is, 14:12 Eastern Standard Time. For all you normies out there, that means 2:12. At 06:09, the moon opposed Uranus and squared Mars, and that was the time I woke up this morning, interestingly enough. And also, interestingly enough, the astrology states that's good for sleep. The moon then turned void, of course. At 20:45, Venus, ruler of love and money, meets Saturn, the tester. At 2200, the moon will enter Scorpio. Tomorrow will be excellent for work or play. Yesterday had a dangerous moon-Pluto square, which makes me glad I decided to do this today. Now, to all Jewish watchers and listeners, a belated Chag Sameach for Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Ingathering, during which God makes their presence, or Shekhinah, known. Sukkot began last week and ended earlier this week. It's Hebrew year 5777 now, and during Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, there were a lot of interesting astrological events to mark the event itself. My apologies that a lot of the news that I have now is, what do the kids call it these days? Old news, but hey, it's still important. Anyway, on with the show. My first topic is that I have a terrible confession to make. That is, I am
Russia is new in terms of nuclear.
I am a spy for glorious mother Russia, acting on behalf of glorious leader Putin, who gets followed, dead, shed, thrown, and still snide for what he elected at the same time. And I am welcome to Moscow with comrades Putin and comrade Assange and all the other comrades at the Russian subsidiary Wikileaks and RT. Completely independent podcaster, and I am trying to bring you the news in a good that was an interesting slip up, a good uplifting spiritual way, even though sometimes it can get kind of depressing and or emotional. So our first real topic of the day is that Assange had his internet cut by Ecuador. Assange had his internet cut by Ecuador acting on behalf of the United States State Department on Saturday the 15th of October. That would be, let me check. Hold on a sec. That would be exactly 2 weeks ago now. He had his internet access cut by the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Clark Stockley, a WikiLeaks activist, says that the State Department pressured Ecuador into this. Quote, "It's quite a coincidence that this happened shortly after Julian and WikiLeaks had published the Goldman Sachs speeches that Hillary had been giving. Quote, obviously the State Department is going to claim that they aren't involved in this. They've lied in the past, and they've also exaggerated many claims about what damage was done by the WikiLeaks, where, in fact, there was no damage whatsoever, and it was actually just embarrassment." State Department, of course, is pro-Clinton, as we learned from the latest Podesta emails. There is a group that is called the Shadow Government, or the Seventh Floor Group, that was set up specifically to advance her agenda in the State Department, whether or not other State Department officials liked it. They want to control anything that might influence the election. Despite this cutoff, according to Stockley, WikiLeaks and Assange in Ecuador still have a good relationship, and they've been, quote, a wonderful host. Stockley urged Sweden to drop charges against him, quote, Sweden, the US, and the UK need to end the prosecution against him, and this ongoing case in the US and whatever is going on in Sweden needs to come to an end because the UN has said there's been a huge violation of human rights. There's no evidence against Julian. What matters, of course, and you need to know this, is not who the leakers are, but the leaks themselves. It is important to understand, based on how she's behaving now, and has behaved, how she would behave as president. Stockley, of course, believes that she will win the election. He said that Assange's motive is not to thwart the election or to help Donald Trump, but simply to expose the truth. Quote, he would certainly publish anything that came forward on Donald Trump as well. Unfortunately, nothing has. Ecuador has stated the cutoff is a temporary measure and that they do not want WikiLeaks or Assange to intervene in the election. Quote, the government of Ecuador respects the principle of non-intervention in the internal affairs of other states. It does not interfere in external electoral processes, nor does it favor any particular candidate. So far, WikiLeaks has exposed Clinton's private speeches to Goldman Sachs, her support for fracking, her plotting to take down Sanders, and her manipulation of him into supporting her, amongst many other things. If I remember correctly, Assange actually said via telephone that WikiLeaks was hacked by the State Department themselves. I am going to check this right now. And I'm actually going to put the link in the description when I can find this story. Yeah, that's right. He said that the crazed Clinton campaign tried to hack WikiLeaks and brand him a pedophile. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. You'll have to forgive me, this is taking a long time. But despite the Ecuadorian embassy shutting down his internet until the US election is over, the website will continue publishing, according to Assange. Quote, every day that you publish is a day that you have the initiative in the conflict, he said via telephone at a conference in Argentina on Wednesday. On a daily basis, they've been releasing emails from Podesta. Assange's claim the release whipped up a crazed hornet's nest atmosphere in the Hillary Clinton campaign, end quote. Quote, they attacked our servers and attempted hacking attacks, and there is an amazing ongoing campaign where state documents were put in the UN and British courts to accuse me of being both a Russian spy and a pedophile. Ecuador's decision to shut down his internet was described by Assange as, quote, a strategic position so that its policy of non-intervention can't be misinterpreted by actors in the US and even domestically in Ecuador. He said he's sympathetic with Ecuador, insisting they face the dilemma of having America interfere with their elections next year if they appear to interfere with the US elections next month. Assange, who claimed that the embassy will be without internet until the election is over to avoid accusations of interference, said he did not agree with Ecuador's decision but understood it. WikiLeaks themselves don't publish from Ecuador, and so they will not be affected by the decision. He rejected the ideas that WikiLeaks is interfering with the U.S. election, claiming, quote, this is not the interference of electoral process, this is the definition of electoral process, for media organizations and, in fact, everyone to publish the truth and their opinion about what is occurring. It cannot be a free and informed election unless people are free to inform. He also attacked U.S. TV networks, many of whom he accused of being, quote, controlled by Clinton supporters. Podesta emails, according to Assange, will make no difference to the election result. Quote, I don't think there's any chance of Donald Trump winning the election, even with the amazing material we're publishing, because most of the media outlets are strongly aligned with Hillary Clinton. Media organizations. Assange said journalists and media people are predominantly middle class and view Trump as representing, quote, what in their mind is white trash. Assange has also warned recently that WikiLeaks will publish enough material to indict Clinton. So that's pretty damn interesting to me. Let's just see how this goes. I'm actually not entirely sure whether Trump or Clinton will win. It all depends on whether what kind of motives the deep state has right now. Our other story is that 2 days after Assange had his internet cut off, RT's bank accounts in the UK were stopped, essentially. So let's take a look at that. Now, it was 2 days after that. It was on Monday. Quote from Margarita Simonian, the RT editor-in-chief: Nam zakryliście w Brytanii, wisieszeta, решение пересмотру не подлежит. Да здравствует свобода слова. Which means, they closed our accounts in Britain, all of them. Decision not to be discussed. Long live freedom of speech. The National Westminster Bank, aka NatWest, part of the Royal Bank of Scotland Group, informed RT UK it will no longer serve them, providing no explanation whatsoever. The letter to them said, quote, we have recently undertaken a review of your banking arrangements with us and reached the conclusion that we will no longer provide these facilities, that the decision was final, and that it is, quote, not prepared to enter into any discussion in relation to it. All banking arrangements will be shut down on the 12th of December. Now remember, the UK government is a significant shareholder in the Royal Bank of Scotland Group. Last time I checked, it was 73%. However, Prime Minister Theresa May has claimed that she had absolutely nothing to do with this decision, and neither did the government as a whole. Now, she said it's a matter for the bank. Simonian said that the situation may hypothetically be related to new EU sanctions against Russia. The Russian Foreign Ministry themselves said the bank's move creates obstacles for the normal work of the channel. It was suspicious as, quote, an action aimed at eliminating a media outlet which was unfavorable for the British establishment but popular among the British public. Quote, if so, then it is a gross violation of the basic principles of free speech and free press by the oldest democracy in the world. Columnist John White said that it's more than a coincidence given the extreme anti-Russian propaganda that is being put out by Western media outlets, including the BBC, which I've seen other commentators refer to as essentially a Tory propaganda machine. The West is losing the information war as RT and other alternative outlets such as Press TV and Telesur and a few others that are started by citizens like SOT.net or Activist Post or the Free Thought Project or the Corbett Report or Media Monarchy, etc., are challenging the Western media narrative on Ukraine, Syria, and the Middle East. Now it's time for the worst thing in the world. America's Next Top President. 2016 edition. We all lost the first presidential debate. To sum it up, Clinton is a foreign policy hawk who tries to sell war as peace and terrorism as counterterrorism. I'll bet the next thing she'll try to sell is ignorance as being strength. She wants to torture Iran into surrender and defeat Daesh through cutting its internet access. Oh wait, she is already trying to sell ignorance is strength. She is trying to demean WikiLeaks and tell people that they should not be looking at them. After all, remember Chris Cuomo on the Clinton News Network, CNN, saying, "You cannot read these, but it's different for us. We're the media." Pff, excuse me, but I'm the media as well. As Joe Biafra said, don't hate the media, become the media. Hat tip to, what's his name? James Evan Pilato, MediaMonarchy.com. Yeah, you heard that right. She wants to torture Iran into surrender and defeat Daesh through cutting its internet access. Trump is a buffoon who further convinces coastal liberals that he is a buffoon, but most Americans are not coastal liberals, and his foreign policy is mow 'em down brutality disguised as isolationism. Trump was right that NAFTA destroyed the industrial belt of the Midwest and New England, one thing that he got right, as well as the fact that we could have rebuilt our infrastructure twice with the cost of the war on terror, although his ideas on the Middle East actually lie somewhere between wipe them off the map and let them sort it out on their own. Clinton herself baselessly accused Russia, China, and Iran of wreaking havoc with cyber warfare and pointed out America has greater capacity, case in point, Stuxnet. By the way, remember Fukushima? This is a point that James brought up on Media Monarchy. Remember Fukushima? Remember how bad that was? Remember how it's now reaching the west coast of the United States and killing a whole bunch of sea life? Well, guess what? We could have made several Fukushimas in Iran, and the radiation could have spread throughout the entire supercontinent of Eurasia. That would have been wonderful, wouldn't it? We could have irradiated the entire place with Stuxnet. Clinton also wants to intensify U.S. airstrikes on Daesh, despite their notoriously low accuracy rate. One of the latest airstrikes, just last month, I think, hit a Syrian military outpost which was engaged against Daesh. Clinton said that they have foreign fighters and foreign weapons. The best strategy is to disrupt their online propaganda efforts to prevent them from gaining these foreign fighters. To the contrary, another perspective from, former Turkish chief of counterterrorism, Ahmet S. Yayla, the Erdogan government has consistently turned a blind eye to tens of thousands of, his words, ISIS supporters using the Istanbul airport and porous Turkish border to cross into Syria to join ISIS. In other words, Erdogan is aiding and abetting Daesh to continue getting foreign fighters, and several other things we have seen demonstrate that the Turkish government is helping Daesh survive and thrive and get their weapons and money and whatnot. And don't forget that we provide foreign aid to Turkey through, Turkey is one of our greatest allies in the Middle East. It is actually part of NATO. Russia, for their part, has also had much more success at destroying Daesh. Trump, although he did not mention things like Saudi money or the Wahhabi ideology that they spread throughout the region which produced Daesh, did note that Daesh emerged from the Iraq power vacuum, to his credit, though stating that it would not have formed had we taken their oil is batshit insane and incredibly imperialist. His relatively non-interventionist stance is at least a bit better than Clinton's hawkish neoconservatism. Both candidates, however, competed on who could celebrate starving Iranians to death with more joy. Clinton said she put a lid on Iran's nuclear program without firing a single shot, except for, of course, the illegal cyber warfare, the assassination of nuclear scientists, and planes falling from the sky due to the sanctions. And this is what I have to say to Clinton. In case you are not watching, that was a bird that I flipped. That was quite an awkward thing to the way I said it. That was quite awkward. Forgive me. The second presidential debate was essentially a real-life telenovela. Most of their time the two candidates, that is, the two puppets, was spent attacking each other's moral unfitness and bad judgment and habitual lying. Issues themselves were downplayed or outright absent. The debate was dominated by the grab 'em by the pussy videos released that past week, which set off a firestorm among the Republican elite, not to mention the Democratic elite and the Clinton-aligned news organizations, with some withdrawing their endorsements and calling for Trump to resign. This is somewhat mirrored in Europe by developments across the continent, but especially British Labour elites attacking Corbyn for straying from the neoliberal party line, although, to the best of my knowledge, Corbyn has actual principles and seems not to be a misogynist or a sex fiend. Trump brushed aside talk of the tapes by calling it locker room talk, while attacking Hillary for helping Bill Clinton cover up his own sexual abuse and pointing out her laughing about getting her obviously guilty client saved from jail time in a rape case involving a 12-year-old. He himself is currently being sued by a woman who was apparently raped by Trump and his and Clinton's friend Jeffrey Epstein, one of those deep state people that you should be keeping an eye on, of course, when she was 13. So, in other words, we have a whole bunch of really disgusting people in our political atmosphere, in our whole political climate. Really disgusting, nasty people. Reminds me of Trump saying those nasty women are those bad hombres. When challenged by Trump on her public and private positions, as revealed in the leaked Goldman Sachs speeches she gave, Clinton ducked behind the example of Abraham Lincoln, implying he did the same. Gotta love Trump's response to that. You're talking about Abraham Lincoln, talking about him lying for some reason. Okay, the thing is, he was Honest Abe, and Honest Abe did not lie. Clinton also accused Russia and Putin of hacking the Democrat Party and the election to help Trump, and the mainstream media has been parroting this line with zero non-circumstantial evidence. This reflects the U.S. elite's growing hostility toward Russia. Reminds me of a point where they were saying, you know, it's 17 agencies that say this. It's 17 agencies. Yeah, the same 17 intelligence agencies that told us that Iraq had WMDs. Oh my goodness. Clinton said that Russia is determined to destroy Aleppo. Russia's alleged war crimes should be investigated, but of course the United States war crimes, such as, I don't know, droning up Doctors Without Borders in Afghanistan, or helping rebels who are shelling a school the other day, should not be investigated, of course, because they're on our side, and we could never possibly do anything wrong whatsoever, because we're the United States, and we're a beacon of freedom to the world! Damn it! Which would necessitate... She also said that we need a no-fly zone in Syria, and it should be imposed unilaterally, which would necessitate boots on the ground and a possible confrontation with Syrian and Russian forces. Never mind that this would be a violation of international law, and that Russia's current intervention in Syria is completely 100% legal because the Syrian government, which is recognized by the UN as legitimate, requested the intervention. Pence, days before, had agreed with Clinton. Trump's comments from months before that he would have the VP run most things are actually pretty disconcerting in this regard, suggesting that a Trump presidency might be a little more neoconservative than we'd expect, saying, quote, the U.S. should be prepared to strike military targets of the Assad regime. Trump said that he disagreed with Pence, for his credit, and that the focus should be on, well, I don't know, eliminating Daesh. What do you know? Eliminating Daesh seems to be a bigger priority. Trump was actually pretty incoherent on nuclear policy.
Russia is new in terms of nuclear.
Sorry, they're actually pretty old in terms of the nuclear. They're actually over 50 years old in terms of the nuclear. They got around to developing nuclear weapons at around the same time that we got around to developing nuclear weapons. Clinton was right on one foreign policy point. The U.S. should be helping the Kurds. And I have to say, yes, please let us help the Kurds. Let us help the Kurds more and more and more. I mean, we're helping them in Mosul right now. We're kind of just tagging along while they're doing most of the dirty work. But yes, please, let's fund and help the Kurds at every single opportunity and chance we get. The Kurds are the best at in the region. We need the Kurds. They're the best fighters. They're like the Middle East equivalent of the Scottish. That is the best analogy I can come up with in this instant. And you know what? It is absolutely true. The Kurds start singing their song and people run away. People run when they see the Kurdish flag being raised. And I believe that we should also be helping Rojava, that is Western Kurdistan in Syria. They have an agreement with the Assad government to function essentially as an independent country within the borders of Syria. They border Turkey. Turkey is accusing them of being terrorists. They are not terrorists. They are a libertarian, specifically left-libertarian country that is emerging as we speak, and they are fighting Daesh hard, and they are winning the battle in every single instance. Trump noted that Obamacare costs have risen 68% since it was implemented, and advocated repeal and total restart. Clinton argued that it should be fixed, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and that Trump should return the state of American healthcare to insurance and pharma companies' price gouging and coverage denial. For my position, I have to say that I believe that healthcare is an important thing that that it should be privatized for the most part, but the following three things should be classified as healthcare fraud in that specific instance. Number one, for-profit healthcare is fraud. It is a life and death decision, and it should be run by nonprofits. Number two, price gouging by pharma companies should be classified as fraud. Once again, life and death decision. This is a form of sort of even coercion. So, number three, coverage denial should be covered as fraud, because it is basically dishonest. At its very core, coverage denial is dishonest. Clinton also noted that Trump's plan to cut specific taxes from 35% to 15% would benefit the rich twice as much as Bush's tax cuts, proposing no tax hikes on anyone earning less than $250,000 per year, with taxation raised only on the wealthy. But, of course, we have to remember that perhaps this is only her public position. Perhaps she could be raising taxes on the middle class and on the lower class once she actually gets into office, if she is whom the deep state selects. Polls themselves barely changed, with both being just as unfavorable, but of course, as Telesur notes, they barely matter. What matters is whether Clinton can actually change the minds of millennials and Hispanics and other people of color who already feel betrayed by Obama's second term and failed promises, or whether Trump can bring out his base in the swing states. The third presidential debate. Two human disasters have been laid bare for all of us to see. Chris Wallace was moderator and, in my opinion, a damn good one at that. Clinton opened the debate by saying the Supreme Court should stand for the people and not for powerful corporations and the wealthy, saying she would stand by a hypothetical Obama nominee, saying she hopes the Senate does its job and confirms his nominee. Trump said the Supreme Court ought to uphold the Second Amendment and all amendments, forgetting that he's not quite so much of a fan of the First, Fourth, Eighth, or 14th. When Clinton said she no doubt respects the Second Amendment, he brought up how Chicago's anti-gun laws, making it pretty much a citywide gun-free zone, made it more violent, and said he might try to overturn Roe v. Wade, a really bad decision, as we saw with Ceausescu's communist regime, which banned abortion, and abortion rates didn't really decrease too much. When they did decrease, they left a whole bunch of kids abandoned by their parents, and abortions did continue, although they became back alley abortions, and women started dying because of it. So, bad idea. Clinton said she regrets that Trump is supported by the NRA and wants to, quote, support the Second Amendment, but do that in a way that tries to save those 30,000 lives that we lose every year. I have an idea. The best way to do that is to ensure that people get guns and know how to use them, because then criminals will be scared to go and try to kill people. And don't forget that improving healthcare, especially mental health care, would also be very useful in this situation, as 1/3 of all gun deaths are suicides. So what you're looking for is not gun control, but better mental health care. On abortion, Clinton said that she'd defend Planned Parenthood, as well as the right of women to make their own healthcare decisions. Quote, I don't believe the U.S. government should regulate those most personal decisions. Of course, they should regulate everything else. Trump turned to immigration, repeating his closed borders rhetoric and talking about heroin pouring into America, neglecting deep state's heroin trade. Saying, quote, we have some bad people, bad hombres in this country we have to get out. Clinton reiterated, we are a nation of immigrants, and that she'll introduce path to citizenship immigration reform in her first 100 days in office. Trump said that he'll negotiate better deals with Mexico and that Clinton wanted the wall a decade ago, but she doesn't get anything done. Clinton said she wants to, quote, bring undocumented workers out from the shadows. I know I prefer Johnson's position on this, which is just vet them quickly and safely and then get them in. I really honestly don't see anything wrong with open borders themselves. Speaking of which, when asked about open borders, Clinton proceeded to accuse Russia of hacking America and using Wikileaks to manipulate the election, implicating Putin himself in the plot that only exists in her head. Wow, can anybody else say non sequitur? Say non sequitur with me, boys and girls. Non sequitur. She then accused Trump of being a puppet of Putin, while Trump fired back, you're the puppet. Guess what, Clinton and Trump? Both of you are puppets of the deep state. When Trump raised the topic of nukes, Clinton said it's ironic given that he's been very cavalier, even casual on the subject. Quote, he's advocated more countries getting them. Clinton said that her economic plan is based on growth and stimulating the middle class with the biggest jobs program since World War II. She also noted that Trump's whole plan would be trickle-down economics on steroids. His plan, quote, is to give the biggest tax breaks ever to the wealthy and to corporations. So, I'm not sure that I want Trump's trickle-down economics, which is basically inverse Keynesianism, or Clinton's neoliberal stimulation. I'm not sure I want to be stimulated by Clinton that much. Trump called Clinton's tax plan a disaster, saying that his protectionism was actually free trade and that he wants to bring our jobs back. Clinton stressed investing in the people and from the middle out and the ground up, not the top down, saying her plan would not add a penny to that. She noted Trump's hypocrisy on giving jobs to Chinese steelworkers and not American steelworkers during his career. That is a performative contradiction, given his current policy positions. She also reiterated her public position, of course, against the TPP. Trump fired back by asking why she hasn't done anything to improve the economy over the past 30 years. Quote, the one thing you have over me is experience, but it's bad experience. For 30 years, you've been in a position to help. You talk, but you don't get anything done, Hillary. You don't. Pretty true, in my opinion. Clinton brought up Trump's sexism yet again, saying Donald thinks belittling women makes him bigger. When she mentioned him referring to a beauty pageant contest as an eating machine, he interjected, well, give me a break. He further brought up his insults toward the disabled reporter, the Khan family, and the Mexican judge, calling his comments a pattern of divisiveness. When she mentioned the violence at his rallies, he shot back with, she talks about violence at my rallies and she caused the violence. Which, by the way, I have to note, the Project Veritas videos pretty much confirmed that. I don't usually trust stuff by James O'Keefe III, given that his last two sets of videos, like the Acorn ones and the Planned Parenthood ones, were definitely manipulated and edited and taken out of context. But when you have this guy saying, oh yeah, we're committing voter fraud, we're committing election fraud, on camera, that's hard to fake. Clinton noted that he never takes responsibility or apologizes. This is a hallmark of a narcissist, which is pretty true of Trump, and I might note all of her apologies herself are non-apology apologies in true psychopathic lawyer fashion. Trump attacked Clinton over destroying the emails after receiving a subpoena and for lying constantly. When he brought up the Clinton Foundation, she said she was thrilled to talk about it, saying it does a lot of great work. We all know how much of a lie that is. When Trump suggested that she give back the money she received through the foundation from Saudi Arabia, she dodged the question and mentioned the Trump Foundation's questionable practices, such as getting a 6-foot-tall portrait of himself using other people's money. I will have to look into the Trump Foundation and see whether it has any other deep state connections. I know that he himself does, hang around with CIA people and drug trade people and praising the NSA and the Patriot Act and whatnot. Clinton again brought up the Trump hasn't paid income tax line, which Trump countered by saying that all of her donors used the same loophole and she could have changed the law. Now, Clinton said, quote, every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him, stated that he said the FBI was rigged, probably was, when it concluded there was no case against her. By the way, as of this morning, they're reopening that case against her, which I hope ends up in the right direction. When the topic turned to Mosul, Clinton said the objective should be to retake Mosul and then move on to Raqqa in Syria. Her geography gaffe here was not given nearly as much attention as Johnson's Aleppo gaffe. By the way, I'll be moving on to talking about both rigged elections and Gary Johnson in the next few stories. Trump responded incoherently, saying, quote, Mosul is so sad. We had Mosul, but when she left, when she took everybody out, we lost Mosul. Beats me what he was saying. Trump and Clinton both used Sanders as ammunition. Trump noted that Sanders said Clinton has bad judgment, while Clinton retorted that Sanders referred to Trump as the most dangerous candidate in modern history. Trump made a good point, however, when he said, quote, Assad is much tougher and smarter than Obama. If Assad falls, we may end up with worse than Assad. That is incredibly true. And we've seen it in action over and over and over again. What happened when Gaddafi fell? He was replaced by terrorists. I'll actually be talking about this too when I talk about Gary Johnson. Clinton reiterated her support for a no-fly zone, saying that it would allegedly save lives, neglecting to mention that it would require thousands of boots on the ground and potential conflict with Syria and Russia. Yay, World War III, we will all go together when we go. Trump said, quote, our country is up late. Nobody can believe how stupid our leadership is. The final topic was the national debt. Trump talked about renegotiating our trade deals again, stressing the importance of American industry. Clinton questioned Trump's palingenetic ultranationalism, aka his Make America Great Again slogan, and said, quote, I think it's important to recognize he's been criticizing our government for decades. Excuse me, why is it a bad thing to criticize our government? Our government is not above criticism. She went on to repeat the getting the wealthy to pay their fair share talking point. Clinton's closing statement noted she's reaching out to all Americans and that she knows the responsibility of protecting the country, because she saw it up close as First Lady when being with Bill Clinton when he was president and doing his shady shit. She said, quote, I will stand up for families against powerful interests, corporations, neglecting to mention that it's only if those families paid her off and there's a little wiggle room for powerful interests and corporations as well. Trump's closing statement reiterated his slogan of Make America Great Again, and then dived into his talking points, quote, we take care of illegal immigrants better than we take care of our vets. That can't happen. Although we do a piss poor job of taking care of veterans, we barely take care of undocumented migrants. Correctly noted without providing the reason. Actually, as a matter of fact, most undocumented migrants in the South are actually technically slaves. They're unpaid agricultural workers. Quote, our inner cities are a disaster. They get shot walking to the store. They have no education. They have no jobs. This is pretty much true, but he doesn't identify the fact that it's because of really failed policies and overspending where we don't need it, and underspending where we actually do need it. He accused Clinton of only pandering to people of color for votes and concluded that a Clinton victory means 4 more years of Obama. Actually, probably worse. The elections themselves are rigged in 2 ways. First off, they are rigged against liberty. Trump equivocates election fraud and voter fraud, according to Reason.com, with media and polling bias, which are very different. Trump himself has helped rig the election against himself in the latter sense. The media opts for the sensationalism of Trump over the dry corruption of Clinton. The government relies on the use of what Robert Anton Wilson called the Bavarian fire drill to rig the entire system against liberty. This is essentially where the people in positions of authority basically condition people to just accept their authority because they look authoritative without actually giving a good reason for why they should have authority. So, in other words,
the whole damn system is wrong! Ah!
So why else do totalitarian systems invest so much effort in propaganda ministries? So authoritarian ideology plus time results in custom, which rigs the system psychologically at the very root in your brain. Without cooperation, government would break down. Quote, if enough people refuse to regard the outcome of an election as legitimate, it would not be treated as such. Education and media manufacture consent for government, regardless of actions taken. It would take a massive cultural shift in ideology to change the belief that liberty is chaos and tyranny is security. As well, the elections themselves have a long history of being rigged. Trump himself may be a reactionary populist with a campaign fueled by xenophobia and an incoherent policy plan, but he's right about a few things. Our neoliberal trade policies are terrible, our antagonism toward Russia should be put aside in favor of cooperation, and of course, the election is rigged, and the outcome is not something to accept as valid on principle. The foundation of democracy is not, as the media keep claiming, trust in the institutions of democracy, but rather the integrity of the institutions themselves. The fact that Trump says something does not make it automatically false. Obama and the rest of the establishment would rather lecture America about the peaceful transition of power, rather than acknowledge that, as countless investigators have found, the U.S. has one of the least transparent and most corrupt electoral systems in the world. 1 year ago, the Brennan Center for Justice at the New York University School of Law, an organization widely seen as being quite liberal, released a report entitled America's Voting Machines at Risk, finding that most voting machines used today are outdated and prone to fail. Most districts' machines are at least 10 years old. Several officials mentioned flipped votes in which a voter touches the name of one candidate, but the vote is registered for another, and we can see an example of that right here.
We're totally transparent here. We welcome anyone who would like to see how the machines operate, how the machines function. If the poll worker got to a machine out of calibration, this is what would happen. I'm going to touch Barack Obama there, but notice it jumped clear down to Chuck Baldwin because the machine is out of calibration. Now it sent me to a screen to vote a write-in ballot. When Barack Obama, the machine's out of calibration. It did not jump up to the Republican candidate. It did not vote a straight Republican ticket. It didn't do that. It jumped down to Chuck Baldwin. So, yeah, the allegation that was made was they went to hit the Democrat and it jumped up to a Republican every time. Straight Democrat did go to John McCain this time. Straight Republican. I don't know if I can get it going. It slid over and did that. So then what do? You go back in and you try to recalibrate the machine. This machine is now calibrated. This is the same machine that was jumping all over the place just a few minutes ago. Let's see. Now it is functioning just as it should function. Up. If I go straight Republican. Oh, it's out of calibration. Notice Ralph Nader came up. If that happens, again, the machine lets you know. There are actually going to be techs trained by the ES&S. They can be dispatched there immediately. Look at the problem. You should never leave the voting booth without voting for who you wanted to vote for.
Okay, holy crap, what the hell was that? Oh my god, that was terrible. Do you see how bad that is? As well, we'll see the Princeton Center for Information Technology Policy released another video, since removed of course, that shows exactly how easy it is to manipulate vote counts on machines. For an 8th grader with little knowledge of computers, it would take less than 7 minutes. That means, for me, it would take less than 1 minute, most likely. So, in April of this year, investigative journalists for TruthDig found that there is no way to verify the official tally, that most machines are controlled by election systems and software owned by Warren Buffett, and that courts have ruled that since the software is proprietary and not free or open source, the vote counts are beyond public scrutiny. Stanford computer scientist and founder of the Verified Voting Foundation, David Dill, said, quote, "If you have a machine collecting and recording votes with an electronic ballot box, there's no way to go back to after the fact and see if the machine made a mistake, whether through malice or simple software error." As James and Kenneth Collier revealed in their book Vote Scam, election rigging has been going on for at least 50 years. Mark Crispin Miller's book Fooled Again documented how the 2004 election was rigged for Bush, especially in Ohio, and don't forget how the 2000 election was also rigged for Bush. Discriminatory practices such as mandatory voter ID laws are still discriminatory and could be considered a case of vote rigging as well. But liberals should also look at their own side and look at the entire system with more skepticism. Even the polls themselves are rigged, as Trump has said. The Podesta emails demonstrate that the Clinton campaign is pushing for the media and the pollsters to oversample specific groups to maintain the illusion of consistent support for Clinton over Trump. If it turns out that the deep state wants to select Trump, then that means that... What is it again? Oh yeah. Then it means that they'll literally try to surprise us with a Trump selection. Pro-Clinton liberals have also conveniently ignored the DNC leaks, which demonstrate beyond the shadow of a doubt that the primaries were rigged against Sanders. At this point, the Democrat Party is engaging doublethink to avoid the cognitive dissonance created by simultaneously recognizing that the primaries were rigged against the better candidate and still supporting Clinton. They must also ignore the evidence proving the entire thing is a fraud.
The whole damn system is wrong!
Quote, Debord and Baudrillard, that is the hyperreality theorists, would be so proud. By the way, there are other ways that the entire election is, in a word, fucked beyond simple vote rigging, let's check out one of the other ways.
First question, U.S. elections, one word.
Fucked. Yeah, I mean, the reason why this band exists is in part because of this particularly dangerous election cycle. And it's my belief that dangerous times demand dangerous songs. And that's why we wanted to both revive the music of Rage Against the Machine, which was built for times like this, as well as rageify the music of Public Enemy and Cypress.
All the saints that bear crosses.
Sorry for
Some of those that work forces. All the
same.
saints that bear crosses.
We're playing for
Sorry for being so slow.
those who are unrepresented by the candidates in this election, who go completely unrepresented, in the media, in politics, in economics, and we want to let them know that they have a band too.
Now you do what they told you.
It's my belief that both the Democratic and Republican parties in the United States do the job that they're paid to do, which is to serve the ruling class.
Now you do what they told you. Now you do what
Aim for the world you really want without compromise or apology, and fight for that one. And that's what, in your vocation, where you live, where you go to school, in your place of work, in your community, and in the world at large.
now you do what they told you. Don't get died, I'm justified. Forever the fact that you chosen one. I'm justified, it's overdrive. I'm wearing the pants of the chosen one.
Rather than each person in their own kind of disparate world, we bring them all together.
Chosen one. It's justified, it's overdrive. I'm wearing the pants of the chosen one.
Okay, so we got to see Tom Morello with Prophets of Rage. Rage On, Prophets of Rage, and Firebrand. I actually love that. That's one solution. Rage against the system, rage against the machine, as it were, with song. Bring these issues to a wider audience. Tell people more about the truth with a bigger audience. And if you just heard that random Windows noise, sorry, that was an accident. Let's also see another clip, this time on who exactly Hillary Clinton really is.
Dice la misma Hillary Clinton en su libro Decisiones Difíciles, donde prácticamente ella está diciendo lo que va a pasar en Honduras, ¿verdad? Y eso demuestra aún más la injerencia norteamericana en nuestro país.
something that you always carry with you. Hot sauce.
Really?
Yes.
Now listen, I just want you to know, people are going to see this and say, okay, she's pandering to black people.
Okay. Is it working?
So, okay, some always good content from Telesur. We can always be sure of that. Telesur and RT. Don't forget Press TV as well. So, what's next on our agenda? By the way, if you don't believe that the Clinton Foundation is corrupt, if you still don't believe it through all of these disclosures, just remember the disappearing money from the Haitian Earthquake Fund. Okay, just remember that. Search it on your own. I don't have time to do it right this exact second. But next on our agenda, which is not pretty radical and not an establishment agenda, is the mainstream media hypocrisy on Gary Johnson. In September, the British House of Commons Foreign Affairs Select Committee released a detailed report on Hillary Clinton's signature achievement of the NATO intervention into Libya, sold as a necessity to prevent an allegedly imminent massacre. The report concluded that the intelligence was inaccurate, the threat to civilians was overstated, the rebels included a significant Islamist element, and by summer, the allegedly limited intervention to protect civilians showed its true face as a regime change operation resulting in political and economic collapse, tribal warfare, humanitarian and refugee crises, widespread human rights violations, the spread of regime weapons, and the growth of Daesh in North Africa. This was not covered in the U.S. media despite the damning and, might I say, disqualifying nature of it. However, the same outlets that ignored it rushed to mock Gary Johnson for his Aleppo gaffe and his naming a foreign leader gaffe for weeks, and declare him disqualified for being distracted in a moment during an interview. It's annoying, Matt Welch writes for CNN, to have both Donald bomb the shit out of ISIS, Trump supporters, and Hillary let's unilaterally declare a no-fly zone over Syria, Clinton supporters, mock the candidate who was against the Iraq and Libyan wars from the start, wants to pardon Snowden, and who is humble about his mistakes. Just look at the way he responded. He said, I'm sorry, I talked about, we were talking about immigration and I thought that Aleppo was an acronym. Or, I'm sorry, I was trying to think of one person. And they forget that the whole, it's 24 hours later thing, the tweet was a joke. Johnson apologized for his gaffes. Unlike Trump or Clinton, and Weld, his VP nominee, bailed him out of the name-your-favorite-foreign-leader mistake by naming Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, who was named by none other than, guess who? Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. His own choice, later, he revealed, was former Mexican President Vicente Fox. I looked into the guy, he seems pretty cool. And, of course, our final item is neoliberalism as opposed to libertarianism. Social democrats, Greens, libertarians, and classical liberals should all unite against neoliberalism. Geoism, for instance, could be a starting point for a green libertarian alliance in the future. The current misunderstanding is that neoliberalism is similar to libertarianism, when in fact it is simply inverse Keynesianism, that is, a rob from the poor and give to the rich dynamic. The term free market has been corrupted with connotations of cronyism and neoliberal ideology, because that's what it is, an ideology. A better term to use would be freed market, as promoted by the Center for a Stateless Society, a left-libertarian organization. The financial sector operates as a cartel rather than as a free market liberal system. Case in point, the authorities went after Madoff, a little teenage guy who was selling dope on the corner but got a little too much money for his own good, but bailed out Goldman Sachs, one of the big honchos, the head honchos, one of the big players. The neoliberal troika demands for Greece, for instance, as well, included raising taxes and bailing out the German banks from their debt, which was, by libertarian logic, completely illegitimate. Neoliberal debt, as a whole, such as student debt, is predatory, monopolistic, and soft imperialist. The neoliberal power structure of Washington, Wall Street, and Brussels uses debt to trap nations and pillage their natural resources, while nations that resist this are destroyed by NATO, such as in Yugoslavia and Libya. Walmart and other megacorporations are antithetical to libertarians' freed markets, despite the fact that they're often touted as the success of a free market. For three examples of how Walmart in particular is antithetical to free market principles. First of all, the Clintons and Walmart had a symbiotic relationship that bred cronyism while Bill was governor of Arkansas. Second of all, Walmart is dependent on welfare from both its customers and from its employees in such a manner that it destroys genuine competition and forces mom and pop shops out of business. And finally, the groceries themselves are GMO, which, as seen with Monsanto seeds and pesticides spilling out of the places they were meant to be and spreading unwanted into other fields and having massive negative externalities, results in massive violations of libertarian principles. So whether a libertarian is an Austrian or a geoist, we should agree that neoliberalism is massive systemic fraud which has no room to account for any political economy, whereas neoliberalism is post-capitalist, one could say. Libertarianism itself carries within it the anarchist critique of capitalism that has evolved into our present-day ideas about the free market, the language of which has been hijacked by neoliberalism. Gentrification, redlining, and underfunding of public utilities prior to privatization, all unlibertarians' neoliberal policies, can help libertarians understand better social democratic logic, that is green logic, such as graduated income tax, and unite libertarians and social democrats on the same line. Libertarians can offer a useful critique of trade union excesses as well that, social democrats and other lefties had trouble understanding that they were excesses. Like, for instance, in Providence, Rhode Island, the government and unions wanted to build a taxpayer-funded baseball stadium, a gigantic one, and in another instance, in Burrillville, Rhode Island, the government and unions wanted to build a fracked gas power plant hooked into the Keystone XL pipeline. The libertarians were part of leadership of a broad grassroots movement to say no to these excesses and their ridiculousness and silliness. Far off in the future, say 3000 EV, a Green Libertarian Alliance might come apart due to far-off differences. But, for now, fundamental differences, sorry. But for now, as Edward Said would quote M. Césaire, there's room for everyone at the rendezvous of victory. So, I wholeheartedly support this, and I think that a Libertarian Green Alliance would benefit us tremendously. Now, our monthly meditation, as recommended by Rudolf Steiner, is patience becomes understanding. Meditate on that for a second. Patience becomes understanding. When you are patient with someone, when you are patient with the things that are going on in your life, you get to understand your life and the lives of others better. That's a good meditation. That's something excellent to meditate on. So thank you for listening, everyone. Hopefully this was an amazing show. Don't forget to patronize me on Patreon or donate to my donor box. Please tune in tomorrow, Please tune in Monday, I should assume, for some philosophy and psychology. Good night, and love, and light.